Why would anyone ever forgive someone who hurt them deeply? Why would you even want to let go of anger that feels so deserved? Someone hurt you, and letting go feels impossible or maybe even wrong. But what if holding on to anger is actually hurting you the most? Hey guys, I'm Dan. This is Mind Care Compass, and today I'm going to explain 2 reasons why we hold on to anger, because when you hold them up to the light of day, easy to see that they don't really make sense. Then I'll walk you through 3 clear steps of forgiveness to actually let go of that heavy weight. So the first reason we hold on to old hurts and angers is that we have this weird kind of belief that somehow holding on to the hurt and anger punishes the person who hurt me. But a lot of times the reality is that they don't even know or care that I'm still angry at them because I don't have a relationship with them anymore. And it's also true that sometimes the person who hurt me might even be dead, and there's no point in holding on to that anger to punish someone that's gone. You really can feel this if we flip it around, and a lot of times people will say, what they did was so bad it can't be forgiven. But forgiveness benefits the forgiver, not the forgiven. There's an old saying in AA that holding on to old anger and resentment is like drinking poison and then waiting for someone else to drop over. It only hurts the person who carries it. Now, that doesn't mean that forgiveness is letting that person off the hook. They can still experience consequences of their actions, but I don't need to hold on to the anger in order to apply those consequences. So imagine that some burglar breaks into my home and then later on they get caught by the police. Now, I can choose to forgive them for that violation of my privacy and my sense of security, but they still have to go to jail. So there can still be consequences for the actions, but we don't need to hold on to the negative energy in order to apply those consequences. Now, the second reason that we hold on to old hurts and angers is that we fear if I forgive, then that's going to set me up to get hurt again. So it's really important to recognize forgiveness is not the same thing as reconciliation. And forgiveness is an entirely internal process, and we can decide separately whether to reconcile or not with that person. There is no need to go and sit down and have a talk with them and hash it all out in order to accomplish forgiveness. Letting go of that old hurt and anger, like I said, is entirely an internal process. You don't need someone else to accomplish that. That doesn't mean that we can't apply boundaries, right? We can, if someone is toxic, well, we can decide if we want them in our lives at all. Or maybe it's a situation where it's a family member and I'm going to see them at family reunions or stuff like that. So I can allow them in a little bit just to say hi once a year, but I don't have to allow them completely into my life. I can maintain the boundary and keep people at a safe distance, but again, I don't need the hurt and anger in order to accomplish establishing and maintaining boundaries. So here's the actual process of letting go of anger. And you might notice that I go back and forth between forgiveness and letting go, just because forgiveness can be kind of a weighted word for some folks. So it really is about letting go of that negative energy. So the first step is actually venting. Now, this is the thing that we tend to not do very well, because we start to vent, maybe complaining to a friend about what happened, and pretty quickly that conscience voice kicks in and says, I'm not supposed to think that way. And especially if you were raised in a faith, then your religion probably tells you you're supposed to forgive. And so we say, okay, I forgive, but it's not really from the heart. It's only superficial. It's kind of like capping a volcano, and all that negative energy is still in there. So this is kind of a gross metaphor, but I like to think of this like having a infected wound that has scabbed over. And the only way to heal it is to take off the scab and get all the gunk out, and then it can heal properly. So that's what venting is all about. And so a great tool for venting is just writing a letter that you will never send to the person that hurt you. Since you know that you're not going to send it to that person, you don't have to edit yourself in any way. You can cuss and swear and call names, and you don't have to be diplomatic or consider both sides. You can just let it all out. Sometimes we call this puking on paper. For myself, when I'm doing this, sometimes I get so mad that I'm just scribbling on the page, which is fine because, that pressure of the pen against the paper feels really good. And it's okay that I'm not forming words because I'm not communicating with someone. I'm just getting it out, right? So if you decide that you're ready to do this venting letter exercise and you sit down with a blank piece of paper and then your brain goes blank and you can't think of how to get started, you can do just a simple sentence completion exercise, which is writing the words, "I'm so mad that," and then your brain will fill in the rest of the sentence or the rest of the paragraph. So you just go with that thought and then you do it again. "I'm so mad that," and your brain will give you more to write out. And when you write, "I'm so mad that," and nothing else comes, then you know that you're done, or at least done for this setting. And that's an important point, is if we're talking about someone who hurt me once or just a little bit, a few times, I can probably do this in one letter. If we're talking about a family member or a spouse, ex-spouse, who has done a lot of damage, then maybe I'm going to have to write several letters. I might think I've expressed everything I can think of for now, but a week later I am coming up with more things. Oh, I forgot to talk about that. And that's fine. Doesn't matter how many letters you do. The only point is that you get out all this negative energy and don't edit yourself. Don't hold back in any way. And by the way, it's better to do this hard copy. Don't do it electronically because it helps to do the physical act of writing this out. Hold on to those letters. We're going to come back to those in a minute. Step 2 of the process is a little controversial, but it is understanding the perpetrator. Now, what this means is just thinking about the person that hurt me. Why did they do that? What do I know about them that would explain why they would behave towards me the way that they did? And, so for example, if my father was physically abusive, I might think, well, I know that his father was way worse to him. And in some ways, my father was less abusive to me than his father was to him. Or sometimes we don't know the background. Maybe it was a stranger who hurt me. And then we just have to go with where there's smoke, there's fire. Someone who did what they did could not have had a happy childhood, so they probably were abused too, or something like that. So you can kind of imagine what their background would have been. I kind of think of this like watching a documentary about a serial killer, right? So if you see their experiences that led up to them becoming a serial killer, that certainly doesn't excuse their behavior, but it just gives you a better understanding of why they came to be the person that they were. Why is this important? Well, here's where it gets a little tricky. I have this saying that the greatest scar that comes from childhood abuse is the belief that I did something to cause what happened to me. Now, as a child, of course, there's this enormous power differential between the person who hurt me and me as a child. And the truth is, I had no responsibility for what happened to me, and therefore there is no shame. But I still kind of feel like there is, because I want to adopt that, I call it a comforting fiction, that I did something to cause it, because that means maybe I can do something different and it won't happen again. So as a kid, I'm trying to clean my room so that I won't get hit again. Or maybe I'm trying to get good grades at school, or just stay out of the way of the abuser so that if they can't find me, they can't hurt me, right? So we adopt this comforting fiction that if I only do something different, then I will be safe, because the truth is just too hard for a little kid's brain to accept, which is I can be hurt at any time and I have no control over that. So instead, we convince ourselves that we do have some power and behave in those ways to try to avoid getting hurt. Now, hopefully we grow up and we develop a mature brain that looks back on those situations and says, that's ridiculous. I was a little kid and I wasn't responsible for what happened to me. But we still have that little kid brain in the back of our brains that says, I think maybe it was me, and I still feel shame. So The whole point of understanding the perpetrator is that then I can completely put the focus, the spotlight on them. It really was, they did what they did because of who they were, not because of who I was or am. And then that allows me to finally quiet that child brain that says, maybe it was me. And that's an important step in the overall letting go of the hurt and anger. It's also letting go of the shame. All right, step 3 is actually letting go. Now, this is an actual step because it doesn't just happen. And I believe that rituals serve a very useful purpose in our lives because rituals mark a milestone in life where nothing is the same after it as it was before it. So 2 examples that we're all familiar with are weddings and funerals. So when you've decided that you're ready to forgive, now's when we haul out those letters that you wrote, the venting letters in the beginning, because it's just a nice ritual of forgiveness, if you can do this in a safe place, to burn those letters. Just a nice symbolism. You know, the ancient Israelites in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, when they were practicing burnt offerings, sacrifices, they would say, let our prayers rise to God as the smoke rises from the burnt offering. So it's this kind of nice imagery about letting go of that negative energy. Also, certain Plains Indians, when they would build a sweat lodge, they always build a fire and think of the smoke as purifying the sweat lodge, and they would do that before they use it the first time. And they would also use the smoke to purify themselves before they went into a sweat, so they wouldn't be taking anything negative into that sacred space. So you can kind of think of smoke as also being a way of purifying yourself from this negative energy of old hurts and anger. Okay, that's not the end though. Now's where the real work begins, because thinking about those old hurts and angers gets to be a habit in our mind, a habit of thinking. We talked about this with the video on worry, right? Well, every time I am triggered to remember what that person did to me, then I go down that same path of thinking, that's right, how rotten they are and how unjust it was, what happened to me and all these things. And that becomes a rut that my brain goes down every time I'm triggered to remember those events. And that stokes the fire of my anger and resentment and keeps it alive. So the irony is I have to make a conscious choice to stop stoking the fire in order for that campfire to go out. And that means catching myself when I'm doing the thing and doing something different. So if you think about breaking any habit, that's how we do it, is by catching myself doing the habit and then doing something different. So I have to pay attention when I get triggered to think about those events and choose to focus on something else for a little while. It's got to be something that completely encompasses my concentration for long enough, probably 20 or 30 minutes, to get away from thinking about that old injury. And over time, then you do change the habit of thinking about it so you don't have to work at it quite so hard, but it does take all that effort in the beginning to change the habit because you've chosen to forgive and not dwell on the old hurts and angers. Okay, that was a lot of stuff, I know, so if you have questions or comments, please let me know those in the comments below, and I'll try to respond to as many as I can. And if you have questions about any mental health topics, not just forgiveness, go ahead and leave those in the comments too. Who knows, maybe your suggestion might be the next video. All I ask at the end here is that you take a moment to share this video with a friend who is hurting and might benefit from learning about forgiveness. Thanks for that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.